here.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ai, for the introduction. Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Ardito Kodijat from the UNESCO Office Jakarta, and basically I'm partly working under science as well as partly under the IOC, which is the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission. So what I'm going to share with you is what is IOC and UNESCO role in global coordination for the tsunami early warning and mitigation system, and the achievement of the Indian Ocean Tsunami Early Warning and Mitigation System. My work here in UNESCO Office Jakarta is focusing only on Indian Ocean, because I'll tell you a little bit later on the presentations how it is basically globally it is being distributed in terms of the coordination. So I think this has been mentioned several times in terms of deadly disaster in recent times, but I think what the point that I would like to share with you is that most of the death of the disaster is caused by hydrometeorological hazard or disaster, as well as geophysical disasters. And so far, earthquake and tsunamis are on the top of the list in terms of number of casualties, which is followed by storm. And we also know that the disaster is now basically transboundary in nature. So it is not only affecting one country or one region or one part, but it's actually transboundary without looking into what are the limitations of the states or a country. And in the end, I will also mention to you that the cooperation of early warning is very crucial in terms of building resilience. And this is basically also related to the Sendai framework of Sendai framework for disaster risk reductions, which is highlighting in terms of the need for transboundary cooperation. Okay, so some initiatives in terms of regional cooperations. The IOC UNESCO has been mandated in terms of collaborates and coordinate in terms of regional collaboration for tsunami warning and mitigation system. Of course, the WMO looking into the tropical cyclone programs, ISDR in terms of global and regional platforms, and so forth. But this is basically stressing more in terms of the importance of regional collaborations. And this regional collaborations is basically, in the end, strengthening the national capacities of the different countries participating in this regional collaboration. So we know that 2004, the world changes. There is the tsunami in 26th of December. It is a massive tsunami, which is 9.1 with a mega thrust. The rupture is about 1,300 kilometers. Which lasts for about 12 minutes, and it's affected different countries within the Indian Ocean. The world at that time watched through the unprecedented. Of course, there are much more better coverage during the 2011 in Japan, but I think in 2004 it's also created a shock into across the world, especially across the Indian Ocean countries. These are some of the pictures that is affecting in Thailand, Sri Lanka, in Colombo, in Indonesia, in Banda Aceh, as well as in India, in the Andaman countries. And to 2004, it raised the casualties until about 230,000 people. It displaced about 1.6 million people, and the economic loss is about 14 billion, and it is affecting many countries in the Indian Ocean. And even from the small islands such as Sri Lanka, Maldives, Seychelles, were also affected by this tsunami in 2004. And because of this, there are requests for an early coordination efforts in 2004. After 2004, I think it was mentioned, the World Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction in Kobe in January 2005, which is immediately after this event, there are a series of meetings that initiate the establishment of the tsunami warning and mitigation system in the Indian Ocean. There was a ministerial meeting in Phuket also in January, right after the Kobe. There is an international coordination meetings in Paris, as well as international coordination meetings in Grand Bay in Mauritius in April 2005. And so you can see that it is actually a series of meetings within a month after the big event in 2004. And in June, where we have the 23rd Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission Assembly, it was decided that in terms of global coordination for tsunami warning and mitigation system, it is divided into 4 areas, which is the first one is the Pacific, and the second one is Indian Ocean, and then the Caribbean, as well as the Northeast Atlantic and the Mediterranean seas. And each of these basins or each of this region is administered by what we call the intergovernmental coordinating groups, which each of these ICG have its own secretariat. And also they agreed to establish what they call the Tsunami Information Center, which is basically supporting the activities of the ICGs. So in the Pacific, there is actually already the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center, formerly known as ICG ITSU, which was convened in 1968. But in the other basins, Caribbean, Indian Ocean, and Northeast Atlantic, at that time, there are no, everything is being supported by the PTWS. So we had the first session of the ICG IOTWMS, which is focusing in Indian Ocean, in August 2005. So this is just a picture showing how it is divided in terms of global tsunami warning systems. As you can see, Pacific is the biggest, and since it's quite vast in the Pacific, so they also divided into several warning centers. You have on the north, the Atlantic, Alaska Tsunami Warning Centers. And then you have the Northwest Pacific Tsunami Warning Centers. And on the south, you have the Southwest Pacific Tsunami Warning Centers. And in the Pacific, they are also now establishing the South China Sea Tsunami Warning Centers. While in the area basically is focusing on the Northeast Atlantic and Mediterranean seas, the Indian Ocean Tsunami Warning Mitigation Center systems, and the Caribbean. And all of these basins has already established their own TIC, which is called Tsunami Information Center. So in Indian Ocean, we have the IOTIC, which is the Indian Ocean Tsunami Information Center. And this IOTIC is also based in UNESCO office, Jakarta. And in Pacific, they already have the International Tsunami Information Center, which is based in Hawaii. It was agreed that it has to be an end-to-end tsunami early warning system. So looking from the regional aspect into the local, looking into from the monitoring and detections until saving life of the communities at the lowest level, either villages or lower than the villages. So the warning systems needs to be complete from the upstreams to the downstreams, from the hazard detections until preparedness and response. Within IOC, we have a tsunami program, which is, of course, it is under the assembly or the executive councils, and we are always in coordination with the other sister agencies, WMO, ISO, IMO, ISDR, UNDP. We have a working group on tsunami and other sea level related warning and mitigation system, which is called TAOS. And this TAOS works supported by 2 task teams. One task team which is looking into the tsunami watch operations, and the other task team working on the disaster management and preparedness. And all of this, basically, there are 4 ICGs but I'm focusing more in the ICG for the Indian Ocean Tsunami Warning and Mitigation System. We have two working groups. One is looking at the risk, community awareness and preparedness, and the other working group looking at the detection and warning and dissemination. In Indian Ocean, we have two main sources, which is on the Sumatra subduction zones, as well as in the Makran subduction zones. So we agreed to establish a regional working group looking at the Makran subduction zones, which is the Northwest Indian Ocean. We established several task teams to work on specific issues. There are two task teams at present looking at the IOWAVE exercise, or the Indian Ocean Wave exercise, as well as a task team looking at the capacity assessment of tsunami preparedness of the member states. This is the structure of the ICG. We have one chair and two vice chairs. At present, the chair is from Indonesia and the vice chair is from Oman and Sri Lanka. And if you see in the map, there are 24 member states in the Indian Ocean. However, out of these 28 member states, but only 24, which is on the green color, is who is already established the national tsunami warning centers in which that we can engage with. There are 4 still other countries, UAE, Djibouti, Somalia, and the British Indian Ocean territories, does not have the tsunami contacts that we can actually engage with. The red one shows the tsunami service providers. So these are the 3 countries, India, Indonesia, and Australia, who are responsible in providing information about tsunami threats to the 24 active member states. Some of the guiding principles of the Indian Ocean Tsunami Warning Mitigation System, it is basically international and multilateral cooperations, and IOC have the role of providing the governance. It is a system of systems, so it is fully interoperable network between the tsunami service providers, which is the 3 countries, India, Australia, India, and Indonesia, and the national tsunami warning centers in the 24 member states. There are clear definitions of what is the roles and responsibilities of each of these, either the service providers as well as the warning centers. And strong policy basis, it is fully owned by the countries. The objective is to protect all countries. We are based on free and open data exchange. The tsunami service providers only provide advice, which is if there is threat or no threat. And the warning is the responsibility of the national warning centers of the member states. And we always conducted performance and monitoring of the activity, especially if there are events. The tsunami early warning system in the Indian Ocean are based on the 3 pillars. We look into the risk assessment and reduction. So we systematically collected data and undertake risk assessments. The second pillar is detection and warning and disseminations. We develop hazard detections, monitoring early warning services, communicate information on threat as well as early warning. And the third pillar, looking into awareness and response. So if you can see, I mentioned before that we have 2 working groups, risk, awareness, and response. The 2 pillars is being handled by 1 working group, and the other working group looking into the detection, warning, and dissemination. In pillar 1, risk assessment, we have published tools, methods, and guidelines on tsunami risk assessment. We conducted several regional trainings for the member states. We also publish Indian Ocean's probabilistic regional tsunami hazard maps, conducted assessment and awareness on the Makran tsunami hazard, organized several regional workshops on tsunami risk assessment and modeling, as well as providing support to the member states in tsunami risk assessment management, policy support, as well as guidelines for tsunami exercise activities. In pillar 2, we look more into the detection, warning, disseminations. So we identify the service definitions, which cover the area of services, the stations, the products, the thresholds, as well as the coastal forecast zones and formats in terms of the warning and disseminations. There is a tsunami service framework, which is 3 interoperable tsunami service providers, as well as a network of the warning centers. We have expanded greatly the seismic and sea level monitoring networks. We have developed a harmonized threat information by the 3 TSPs. So every country will receive information from the 3 countries, but it is a harmonized threat information. National warnings, again, it is the responsibility of each countries. So either it's the warning center or the disaster management office. After we start in operation, we have handled several events. We have a yearly performance of assessment and a 6-monthly communication test between the tsunami service providers and the national warning centers. And we have had the interim service of GMA and the Pacific. Okay, I have a little more time left. So this is just showing, this is the seismic network in 2004, before this tsunami happens. And this is our seismic network now, in which that it has been tremendously increasing. Especially in the countries in Indonesia, in Thailand, as well as in Australia. This is the sea level network, where we only have 4 sea level gauge at that time in 2004. And this is the sea level network that we have 10 years after, including about 7 dark buoys, as well as a number of tide gauges along the coast in the eastern as well as in the western part of Indian Ocean. The operational elements is basically the tsunami service providers will look into the seismological data. We have already modeling algorithm of the different scenarios and monitoring the sea level data. This is being conducted by the 3 TSPs and provide the information to the warning centers. And the warning centers is responsible in providing the warning to the public. From the TSP to the warning centers, we use 5 formats: the GTS, SMS, fax, emails, and web. And for the warning from the national warning centers to the communities, they also use different mode: television, radio, SMS, sirens, web, or emails. In Pilar 3, we are basically focusing on awareness and response. We develop education materials. We have conducted over 100 capacity development workshops and standard operating procedures for the Disaster Warning Center, Tsunami Warning Center and Disaster Management Office. The IOTIC has been established in UNESCO Office Jakarta. We conducted several events. So this is the information centers, which is based in Jakarta. The IOTIC is focusing on 4 programs, which is the Indian Ocean Tsunami Ready Programs and Recognitions, the Tsunami Evacuation Map Plans Procedures for the Indian Ocean Member States, end-to-end tsunami exercise and drills, either at the level of community and schools, as well as preserving past tsunamis information for future preparedness. These are some of the materials that has been produced by the IOTIC. We develop training modules, booklets, as well as videos for awareness and education. We conducted Indian Ocean Wave exercise. We have conducted that in 2009, 11, 14. The last one that we conducted in 2016, and the next one will be conducted in 2018. In the IOF exercise, the 24 member states participated, and 12 of the member states actually includes community movement. In the exercise, we have almost 59,000 people were evacuated during the exercise. 92% of the exercise include the Disaster Management Office, as well as the local Disaster Management Office, as well as the media. We conducted online assessment. UNICDR also supported in terms of observing the activities, and UNSCAP also assisted us in developing outreach materials. The next IO Wave will be in September 2018, and the preparation has started next week. The current status, we are supported by different budget sources. Of course, the regular program from UNESCO, as well as several donors like Funds in Trust from Indonesia, from Malaysia, from UNSCAP, as well as from Japan. The last meeting that we have is in 2017. There are some key outcomes. The first outcome is that we need to put greater emphasis on community awareness and preparedness. So in the upstream part, in terms of achieving the warning detections, it is already well advanced, but I think the gap is more in the community awareness and preparedness, as well as to do the appropriate response if the warning is issued by the warning centers. Capacity assessment of tsunami preparedness need to be carried out. We are developing the tsunami ready guidelines for the community, as well as capacity development for workshops will be continued for the member states. This is basically the same thing, but what we are saying is that we need to focus more on the last mile. So community preparedness, awareness becomes the focus within the next few years. In conclusions, I think the establishment of the intergovernmental and regional cooperation platforms across the ocean basins, like for tropical cyclones, tsunami, river basins, has deepened the regional cooperations. The good regional cooperations provide a strong observation networks. Early warning systems established for each specific hazard. Each specific hazard has its own characteristic, has its own importance. However, it has to be enhanced the regional and national capacity for a strong warning and information sharing. Efforts need to be strengthened in terms of expanding the warning systems that has already built into a more multi-hazard approach. This especially relates to the gaps in the last mile, in the awareness and response, because of the different warnings the community will be receiving. Focus on the warning chain. There is a large difference remains in the capacities in the countries, especially looking at these small island developing states as well as the least developing countries. Strong policy support at the national level is very important to ensure that the multi-hazard early warning system will be integrated, and commitment towards regional collaborations will be needed because funding from the multilateral becomes scarce. So national support for regional collaborations is very important. I think that's my share of presentations. Thank you very much.